afternoon, everybody. Welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. Here on Rivals.com. But last time, I'll say that, as we have an exciting week next week. But we've got an exciting show to finish off the week today on this 27th of June. Believe it or not, yeah, we're ready to flip the calendar. July right around the corner. I see the stands all around Ann Arbor selling fireworks, and I might get into some I got a big day planned. Might be getting into some lawn mowing today. My plan this week is gone. I was going to get into some a couple days ago, and then it rained. And then the next day, it was for the next couple days, it was like felt like 100 degrees. And I said, I'm gonna pass on that. Then the next day, I was like, I'm gonna get out there and mow, and then it started to rain again. And so here I am today. It's another real scorcher. But, the lawn at some point, you got to get out there and make it happen. So that's my big plan for today. And to see where Malachi Lee, the big tackle from Hawaii, is going to end up going. And, I don't know about you. There's some things that are, you would say, simple. You not complex math. It's pretty easy math to add 6 or subtract 6 or whatever it is. And yet when it comes down to time zones, it gets confusing. Now, Malachi Lee is supposed to be announcing his commitment, but right now in Hawaii, where he is at and is going to make his announcement, it's 8 a.m. And the report is that he is going to make his announcement at 7:30, and yet I keep seeing all these people like, oh, well, it'll be 1:30 Eastern. And I'm thinking, wait, is that what? Well, who's doing the math? And so they've confused me, because I would think if he was announcing at 7:30 his time, it would be like 2 a.m. here. But I don't know. I mean, I could be off on that. I get thrown. How many times over the years I'm trying to interview somebody in Central or Mountain Time or something. I said, okay, well, I'll see you at 3:00, and I'm there. And they're like, oh, no, you were talking about 3:00 East. Yeah, so Lee is making his decision today, so we'll see what he ends up doing. And Michigan's in a pretty good spot, so they would like to have a big tackle out of Hawaii for sure. Today, I was looking at the Michigan football roster and looking at the 2 deep, and every year and come out of spring, you head into fall, there are guys that switch positions. Some of them go from offense to defense, some of them on the same side of the ball but different positions, sliding in, sliding out, sliding back, forward, whatever that is. Some of it's a little bit nuanced, some of it's just with a name. I'll speculate on some guys that could be potentially switching positions, and it's a fun thing to do. And then you just think about it in the recent years, everybody say, yeah, who's the next Mikey Sainristil, who was the biggest position switch. And, Sainristil was, all right as a depth wide receiver, but then he moved over and played DB, and he was really good. And then he was great. And so you just think about, I don't know if there's going to be the next Mikey Sainristil, but we'll speculate on that. We'll see what you think when it comes down to it. As I was asked last week, I got a comment saying, I don't talk basketball enough. Stop saying that you're covering Michigan football and basketball and you don't talk about basketball. Well, your comment was taken to heart, and since then, even that day, was actually talking about basketball. We've put some basketball into the mix. You had the NBA draft, and you had some Michigan players finding out where they're going to end up. Talk about that. Plus, we'll spotlight one of the newcomers, the transfer from Illinois, Morez Johnson Jr., or as I found out today, as he likes to go by, according to his Instagram, Morez Johnson. So we'll do that. Hope everybody is doing great out there. And speaking of what I said just a moment ago about getting your comments in, yeah, get your comments in if you're watching this show live for sure. If there's something as we are talking about that you are interested in and you have something that you want to weigh in on, by all means, do that. If you're somebody that listens to this or watches this show after the fact, getting in on the comments on the podcast, we love. The comments on the podcast don't get enough love, but when you do, put a comment on there. I see them, and if it's a whatever critique, question, request, we like all of those. So yeah, go ahead and get it done when it comes down to that. And we do start with some recruiting, and Michigan was able to, since we have last been on, get yet another recruit and getting an offensive lineman. So they just continue. If somebody has not been following recruiting and just came up and said, how's Michigan doing in recruiting? I would say, are they doing great? Sure. I mean, I can make an argument for great. They're doing really good. Great is one of those things you kind of, for me, don't just throw out there casually. So I do think they're doing really good. And there have been times, and it wasn't even last month that it was happening again, that there was some people that do shows like this. And look, you got to have some content. It's tough, for a lot of people to sit down and they get up in the morning and they're like, what am I going to talk about when it comes down to Michigan football? Let me get something that will get people worked up and talk about how Michigan's dropping the ball in recruiting. It was a little while ago that there was some talk like that, because Michigan, before they weren't just landing guys left and right, and there was a report or some talk. I don't know specifically who it was. It's probably somebody from one of our rival sites was making the point that Michigan's not giving out numbers to recruits, and everybody's like, well, they're not going to get anybody. This is a bad move. And then some people said, well, this is a smart move. You get to July 1st and you don't know. And yet, maybe this person was right. And yet all of the players that Michigan was in on, that you knew, I knew that they were in on, Michigan was talking numbers with them. So I don't know. That didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. It still doesn't. So, they were in on somebody and they're bringing guys in, and somebody said, well, hey, how much? No, we're not talking about exact numbers. Oh, well, next thing you know, a guy's committing. Was he, were they giving him a pretty good ballpark, or they just say, so I don't know about that, but it had the, I think, desired effect, because that was kind of the lead story or narrative there for a little while. And it got people worked up like, oh, Michigan, they, I don't know. And maybe you're never happy. And that can be something that, as a fan, I mean, you're always wanting more, even if you're doing pretty well. I was looking at this recruiting class, and I noticed on the Maize and Blue Review on the Den, there was somebody that said, Michigan's getting shut out with linebackers. This is, and they didn't say it was a joke, but they really need to step it up there. And I don't know, at the quarterback position, I mean, there's some position groups where you look at it, and if you're looking at it and you say, yeah, this position group is, not up to snuff coming up, like for the upcoming season. Let's just take an example. You'd say wide receiver. Although I think the wide receiver, how it's set up right now, looks pretty good. And of course it looks really good now that Underwood's in the fold, and, wide receivers are going to want to, we all knew that, step up and play with them. But if there was not any guys that were committed right now, you'd say they've got a hole there. And I think it goes back to previous to the portal, where, you'd have a hole in the team. You say, yeah, man, they really need to do something now. You can plug those holes up pretty easily. And I wonder, I don't know. I was trying to think about this today. Michigan has had some number one recruiting classes, going back in the day. But even those classes, you might have been able to look and say, yeah, but how come they didn't have the corners necessarily in this class? They don't have the corners. So there's always one position, maybe two, that you can look at, even if you've everyone else is saying, oh, it's going really well. It's looking excellent. Things are just going along smoothly. There's going to be somebody you can always look at it and say, no, maybe I could have said that quicker. Michigan this week, we talked about Zion Robinson, the wide receiver out of Texas, last time we were here. And then Michigan went out and got an offensive lineman out of Massachusetts in Marky Walbridge. And, you see Marky Wahlberg, Mark Wahlberg kind of thing. That's an East Coast thing. So, yeah, I mean, the joke and what's going on there, a little bit of fun, but an offensive lineman that kind of popped out for me sort of out of nowhere. There were some other names, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, Marky Mark's in. It's like, all right, let's go. There it is. So as we wait on what's happening with Lee, today is the day, and Michigan is right there when it comes down with Lee. There's a couple other schools that are a possibility when it comes down to Lee. I have to look, see what I have written down, so I don't want to make the error when it comes down to it. Georgia and USC. Oh, there's times when you look at the announcement, and if it doesn't fit, and if it's kind of out of the prime time for Michigan, you might think, that's something, and that is something to at least think about when it comes down to it. Just getting an update really quick. Yeah, nothing as we sit here right now. So Lee, if I had to make the guess, 1:30 Hawaii time. So there you go. That's pretty late. The question about Roman Wilson's high school, that's a good question. I don't know exactly. Was he from Honolulu? I remember Roman Wilson took at first, whatever, I'm not great with the Hawaiian Islands and everything else. I know Hawaii, but I know there's another, but I think Roman at first was taking a flight. Would he fly out on a Monday morning or on a Sunday night, and then was he staying wherever, maybe it was somebody else, and then he would fly back, like us, and maybe that's common to do over in Hawaii. You take some of these puddle jumpers or island jumpers or something else, can't get on a bus. I guess maybe you could take a boat, but that was pretty interesting to me from Roman Wilson. But I do not know if off the top of my head, if it is the same school, but that would be something that could be checked out pretty easily. You know what I'm saying? So feedback when it comes down to recruiting, TH is saying a slow start, but finish near the top. Yeah, I don't know. June and July, you're getting some guys, and they've got a schedule. Give you that schedule at least over the next week of some players that could be committing. But the way Michigan and the way things go now, look at Michigan last year. You can get to November and you can get a Bryce Underwood. So whatever happens, and I know, the kids have their high school season, and most of them, if we're just talking generally, most of those kids like to get their commitment out of the way before their high school season, even high school practice, which usually starts in August. You get those 2 a day. So that's why June and July are so hot. But some of the players just can't make a decision, and some of the big dogs, they don't have to worry about their scholarship. They can sit back and they can decide anytime they want. So I'm not going to get worked. I don't get worked up. I mean, it's good for some people to get worked up about it, and it gets other people worked up, and it might work pretty well. So there it is. Hadley, who was able to correct me that July 1st is this year coming up. Whatever I did, I screwed it up Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's Tuesday, and I was talking about it being on a Wednesday. And, Hadley saying that they're 6 hours behind us. So, and he said last I heard his decision today is at 7:30. Well, so what's that make it, here, Hadley? So that's what I'm talking about. People are saying, acting like it's 7:30 here, or acting like it was going to be 1:30 or 2:00 here, which isn't actually, the way that it plays out. It's confusing. I remember I lived over in England, which is actually, 5 hours, sometimes 6, but, 5 hours ahead of us. And Hawaii is 6 hours earlier. I can remember watching the finals where the Chicago Bulls took on Portland, and I was in a spot that it was 7 hours earlier, and it was 3:00 in the morning, and I was down in a lobby watching the NBA finals in a foreign country, and that was interesting how that ended up working out for me. So, Lee, we wait and see what's going on. This right here is something I want to tell everybody about, and I tell everybody every time you tune in, is that you want to get the latest with Michigan football, basketball, Michigan sports all day, all night. Fantastic community to get involved in. What's going to keep you excited, engaged in Michigan? Certainly not going to be any of the local sports talk around here. Going to be some podcasts like this very one here. And it's going to be, folks, the Maize and Blue Review. And you can sign up today by going to michigan.rivals.com. And, coming up next week, the merger with On3 is going to happen. So things will look and sound a little bit different. But what I'm telling you is that I work for the Maize and Blue Review, and you want seasoned, balanced opinions? Well, that's what I'm going to try to bring you. That's what I try to bring you over on the board, on the Den, on every player, on all the coaches, on the schedule, anything that's going on where it concerns Michigan. There's any controversy that you are looking for some a trusted source that is going to give you the a balanced and opinion on what's happening there. Well, that's what we're doing over on the Maize and Blue Review. So we will see you over there, and looking forward to it. So that is what's going to happen. So now you think about position switches, and here it is. Mike Sainristil still is the one you think about, and that was not one that when it was made, it's like, okay, he was a serviceable wide receiver, ended up being a great defensive back. But I put at least the candidates. Now, before I put the list up there, I just want to say, if you're somebody that's dialed in on everything Michigan and you see a name up there and you think, this guy's stupid for putting his name up there, this guy's never going to change positions, that's fine. And you might be right. There might not be. But I put some guys that could potentially move. And that's what I did. I'm not looking, you could be right. Not that I'm stupid, but you could be right that the person is staying exactly where he's at. They would never move. And again, it's hard for some folks, this is just before I put the list up, to have the imagination. If they don't have somebody that's telling them that it's happened, their brains just can't do it. They just can't say, no, that would never happen. And so with that, I put the list of some of the players that I think that could potentially move on Michigan when you think about it this year. Now, Brady Norton came from Cal Poly, and he was in for the spring. Now, he played tackle out at Cal Poly. He played right tackle. He played left tackle. In the spring game, he was playing some tackle, and he looked pretty good. If you have watched these shows when Jim Scarcelli's on for the spring game, more than once we were looking, and Scar was like, who's that? Who's that? And we looked and was like, oh, that's Norton. Norton looked pretty good there, but in a pinch, could he play tackle? Yes, but He's 6'3". So there's not many 6'3" tackles. In fact, mostly, tackles are like 6'6" and just, at least 6'5". So 6'3" is a little bit on the shorter side to be playing tackle, but that is one at least you could take a look at on the depth chart where there could be some possibility. I put Lawrence Hattar, who's a transfer from Ferris, and he's just come in. He wasn't in the spring, so I don't know about the possibility with him. Haywood, who was a gigantic recruit for Michigan, was listed as a tackle. These last two are two that I really think could happen. If I was ranking them, I would rank that it would not be a surprise to me if Ty Haywood, who is part of this incoming freshman class but was not in for spring, if during the year when you are listening to Sharon Moore or Grant Newsome is having one of his news conferences and they ask about Haywood, he said, yeah, we're working him at guard. That would, whether it's be expected, that would not be a big surprise, that one. Now, Link is the interesting one. So Haywood is one that would not be a surprise. Link is the interesting one because Link, as you know, from people that follow Michigan football, and that, let's see if I get this right, he started 12 games for Michigan at right tackle last year. And then in the bowl game, he played left tackle. There are people that, watch tape, grind out the tape, and that think that Link would be better off with Michigan if he was kicked inside and played guard. Now, Link has got the dimensions. He's a big kid, and we already know that he played tackle. That's where he had his experience. But this is one that has been talked about on the inside. The possibility that Link could be competing at guard come fall other than tackle. Now, if this is a surprise to you, this is one of those things that's a shock. And you could say, how could a guy that played tackle all year long, and now you're saying that can he play guard? Well, there's some thought that because of footwork and just, you go out there and say, hey, you're best suited overall to play guard. So that's a possibility. None of these things are written in stone. I'm not over here telling you that this is happening. I'm telling you these are possibilities, and that's the way it goes. Now, automatically, Mustafa says Link is too tall for guard. I don't know. What is he, 6'6"? So, let's see. Let's see what he's listed at. I think he is 6'6". But is that going to be too tall? Let's see if I can get a 6'6", 328. You'd like your guards to be what, 6'5"? So I don't know. He's getting either way, 6'5", 6'3", too short to play tackle, 6'6", too tall to play guard. There you go. There have been some things that you get when it comes down to it. Mustafa's in. He's in on the possibility of Haywood moving, and he's also looking at Mason Curtis, who is on this list. And when we look over on the defensive side, let's get over that defensive side. Mason Curtis played safety last year, but already when you call it a rover or you call it a nickel, a matchup on the inside, and both Curtis and Brandon Hillman, the big hitter, Brandon Hillman, who you'd say, those guys are safeties, but they're also nickel cornerbacks, so matchup pieces. And most of these guys, if not all of them, because you see Zeke Berry, he went from safety to corner last year. Would it be a huge surprise if he was back at safety? I think maybe next to his name, you just have cornerback, nickelback, safety. I mean, he has 3 different positions, and maybe, he can work at all 3 and wherever they need him. It's nice to have that versatility. And all of these guys, because Hillman was asked about it, and he's like, yeah, I didn't have any problem with trying this out. But you look at him and the way that he comes up and hits, you think that's more safety than it is corner. Although Brandon Hillman, when he was in high school, he was a quarterback, and now he's over on the defensive side. But Curtis is an interesting one because thinking of size, Mustafa, when I think of a nickel corner, I think of somebody like Sainristil, 5'10", somebody that can get over there, and you have to really be able to match up with those wide receivers on the inside, those guys that are going to be playing in the slot, and you got to be able to really turn and run with them. And when you're talking about somebody like Mason Curtis, what is he, 6'5"? That seems like it would be a little bit tall, 6'5", 200 for somebody that's going to come down and play as a nickel. But Mason Curtis was like looking at a player like Kyle Hamilton with the Ravens as a more of a rangy safety that can come up and, show that versatility and do them both. So there you go. Here's the list, and at least thinking about it. And the only guy that I did not mention here is one that I don't know if anyone else would even put on their list about potential position switches, but the NOB, who was a very highly ranked linebacker, Nathaniel Owosu Boateng, he's a linebacker, and right now Michigan doesn't have any linebackers committed, so you'd say, why in the heck would they switch, Boateng? He's a linebacker, he's going to be on the inside. When I was at the spring game and I was just sitting there and I was just taking it in, I saw number 12 out on the field. And I'm like, oh, there's the NOB. And the first thing that popped into my head is he looks like a safety. And it probably didn't help me with thinking, if he was at 55 or something over there, that's a linebacker number. 12 is more of a DB number. So it wasn't all that. And, but he's built, I think he could play either. But I'm just saying that I think that there's a possibility that the NOB could be a player where I could see him playing some safety, because that's what he looked like when he was out there to me. Watching him backpedal, watching him go through the drills, looking at his size, his height, he looked like a safety to me. So that's just one to think about, and how if that would be a possibility. A run on some player talk here. Mustafa says Zeke Berry did a fantastic job at corner to end the year. He did, and I think we all do our two deeps right now. And if you were sitting around and putting a two deep, I think the majority would have Jair Hill at one corner, and I think the other side, I think most people would put Zeke Berry in. But that seems unsettled, yet to be determined to me. I think it wouldn't surprise me if Shamari Earls, the freshman, is in the mix at corner. And then, I don't know, one of the Metcalfs over there, it wouldn't be a surprise. I know Jeremiah Lowe, Josiah Edmonds was out on the field. I'm not almost every position on defense. I like, yep. And at safety, obviously, if Rod Moore was back, I'd feel like it'd be Rod Moore and probably Brandon Hillman over there if I was just making up the starters. But the corner is where the competition, I think, is going to be when you get into the fall on who it's going to be. So that's it when it comes down to that. G Money with a question. He's in a point. He says Michigan's getting all the recruits out of Virginia. They are doing a very good job in Virginia, no doubt. And he asked about Scar being on this week. No, Scar was set to make his debut and do a show and then hit a snag. So he's trying to get that going. We'll see if he can get up and running on that next week. That's to be determined. We'll find out what's going to happen there. As far as you got Malachi Lee today, you also have coming up on the 30th, you have, which is Monday, June 30th. Get it right. Andre Clark Jr., Kentucky and Michigan. He seems like he's going to be a Michigan man. Tuesday, you've got Goodwin, the linebacker, Kenneth Goodwin. There's a linebacker, 6'2", 205, turning and running. He is making his announcement on the 1st, which is a Tuesday, coming up as the calendar flips. And Michigan is in a great spot to be able to land Kenneth Goodwin out of California. And then on Wednesday, you have Mr. Webb, Donovan Webb, 4-star safety out of Texas, standing right next to Sharon Moore. And you got Michigan, Kansas State, and Texas Tech. It's not often that Michigan's getting into the battle with those two other schools for a player, but here they are. They are recruit all around the country. Michigan also looking good for Webb. And then, yeah, we're expecting, I mean, we don't have to wait to the 4th. Fireworks. And around here, people are already shooting off fireworks. They already think it's the 4th of July. And on the 4th of July, Travis Johnson, he's got to have, if you've set your announcement to be on July 4th, you better think about some pyrotechnics coming along with it. You better think about lighting something up and having that as part of your presentation. We'll see. Just speculation on my part, although it is not speculation when you are over on the Maize and Blue Review. There are future casts. There is high confidence level that TJ out of Virginia, as G Money was saying, Michigan doing well over there. Standing next to Ron Bellamy, pictured that he will end up going to Michigan over Georgia, over Penn State, and over Va-Tech. So how about that? And then you do have, if that's not enough, it just keeps going on July the 4th. Who knows with turn time, if Michigan bringing in all these different tackles, we're about to find out on Malachi Lee. Would that affect somebody like Turntine, who has Texas A&M and Texas? He's out of Texas. But then also, I think you can say academics is important to him because he's got Michigan and Stanford in there. So in with a chance. The Calvin Russell III is, I think, the most intriguing recruit in this entire cycle so far for U of M, in that he is from South Florida. He's from Miami. He is a star wide receiver. He wants to play basketball as well. He has talked about that, and he likes the teams like Oregon, LSU, all the Florida teams. Of course, the U right there in his backyard, Florida. And yet he went up to Michigan and he blew I don't know if he got blown, but everybody that he talked to was blown away by CR3, Calvin Russell III. And at least the reports is that he was blown away. So sometimes the fit, you just get up there, and I don't know. I don't know if every school he goes to, everybody's coming out and they're just like, oh my gosh, he's coming here. But that's the way it feels right now with Calvin Russell the third. And there is a future cast in on him over on Rival. So how about that? And then it doesn't stop after the 4th, because that's Russell, and the fireworks continue on the 5th, because Dorian Barney is a corner out of Georgia who you got 4 teams for his services, including Texas A&M at Penn State and Georgia Tech, which is a little bit weird. But then there's Michigan. right there. So it is. It's happening. It's happening all over the place. So we'll see. And Michigan looks like they're in a good spot for all of these guys. So there you go. Let's see. We've got. I like when I say there's talks that we're taking 3. Well, Michigan has 2 right now in Pyle and Robinson. So we'll see. And Johnson, a lot of people think these come. So that would be the 3. But I got to believe that somebody like Sadler or somebody else, Russell. I mean, what happens if Johnson commits on the 4th of July? Then is Russell not coming in? Who knows how that goes down? But we will see. All right, finally here today. And again, if you have any questions, any points, anything else you wanted to talk about, you could fill it up here on the feedback. If you're watching this live, if you're one of the, I don't know, about 700 right now, they're watching live, jump on in. Here is a turn to basketball. You probably know by now that Danny Wolf, it was getting late, and you were thinking, whoa, hopefully Danny Wolf gets drafted. He did get drafted, and it was by the Nets. And he was in tears. His family was in tears. Congratulations to Danny Wolf. 5 first-rounders there for the Nets. That's it's a spot where I was looking at the roster. I got a Cam Thomas and a Cam Johnson, but you look at the rest of that roster and you're like, who are all of these guys? But, they're going to have 4 or 5 of these first-rounders in, and that'll be an interesting team where I don't know how many games they're going to win, but that could be an interesting spot and a competitive spot for Danny Wolf as one of those first rounders as he ends up going to the Brooklyn Nets. And then last night, as I was watching the draft, I like the Pistons selection, by the way, of Chaz Lanier, the shooter out of Tennessee. And he's saying, hey, he's an excellent shooter. Great 3-point shooter. Very good 3-point shooter. Pistons identified him. Second rounders are flyers, but as it goes, a good shooter, or a possibility that he could find out. I mean, if you can really stroke it and fill it up when you get into the NBA, you can find a spot on an NBA roster. So we'll see if Lanier is able to do that. But then Vlad Golden does not get picked, but he does, after it's all said and done, get a 2-way deal with the Miami Heat. And I'm confident that Vlad Golden will be around the NBA for a couple years. Can't teach his mobility and size, and he's a good bargain right now for teams. I think that he'll stick and stay. So here's the spotlight for today. It's one of Michigan's incoming portal transfers out of Illinois, Morez Johnson Jr., or Rez, as it says he goes by on his IG. The latest news on Rez is that he made the 25 USA Under-19 World Cup team, so good for him. That's great experience. He's 6'9", but if you did watch the NBA draft, you'll notice Jay Billis, almost every time he was giving his thoughts on a player, he'd say, yeah, this guy's 6'9", 7'2" wingspan, 7'6" wingspan. Wingspan is something to take into account. When I look at Morez Johnson, I'm looking at him. You could say he's a center. You could say he's a power forward. Whatever. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. And when you watch his tape, now I haven't watched a complete game from him. Here are his numbers from last year. He ended up starting 8 games and playing over 17 and a half minutes per game. 64% field goal. I didn't see him taking any shots outside of the paint. So I don't know how that looks in the picture we have him here. It looks like maybe he's at the free throw line there. 61% free throws. He's going to have to do a little bit better there. He can get better at the free throw line. But averaging over a block a game, you can see that. But what stands out when you watch the highlight reel tape of Johnson Jr. at Illinois last year, he is a tremendous rebounder. He hits the offensive glass. He's on the defensive glass. And when he gets it, he knows what to do with it. Once he rebounds, he goes back up and jams it. He knows how to go forward and throw it down. And a lot of pick and rolls, a lot of alley-oops, and you just throw it up to Morez and Rez, and he knows what to do with it down low. He's flushing it. And with that length, he's good on the defensive side. And during the NBA draft, I did not have this comparison for Morez Johnson, but as I was watching the draft the other night in the first round, when the Rockets took the center from Duke, Kamen Malucha, and in Malue, that's it. Kamen Malue. When they were showing his highlights, now he's listed at 7'2", and he's got a longer wingspan than that. But if you watch Duke this year, that's what he does. I mean, you probably watch Duke because Cooper Flag, the NCAA tournament, all of that. And you're like, wow, who's this big man? That was the big man's role for Duke. He would just get it and he would throw it down. He would hit the offensive glass and he would throw it down. He'd get a defensive rebound and they would be off and running. I like the comparison because I think that's what Morez Johnson, that's what I'm expecting, at least from what I have seen in my initial tape study from watching Morez Johnson Jr., the center who ends up going to Phoenix. Houston drafted him, but Kevin Durant is headed to Houston, so that number 10 pick, the first round pick, is headed to Phoenix, so that kid will play for Phoenix. But I like the comp as I was watching it, and that's why I mentioned it right here. And so I have to mention, when I talk football, let's just say, and this isn't even an average day, this is more like a slow day. We got 30 comments or whatever it is here on this show. All of them are about football. And then I would just spend 5 minutes talking basketball, pouring my heart out. And I got the one guy in there, hey, talk some basketball. Nobody's talking basketball. But that's all right. I understand how that goes. It's more of a niche. The winter sports, people like it. But look, football is king. It rules. And there's no doubt about that, how it goes. And that's why we spend the majority of our time talking about football. It's the perfect sport. It's the great sport. It's the fan sport. It's number one in all of our hearts. Thanks so much for watching today's show. Keep cool out there. I'm going to mow the lawn. Maybe watch that Rocket Classic a little bit, see what's going on there. And until Monday, everybody have themselves a great weekend, and we'll see you over on the Maize and Blue Review. Take care, everyone. Bye.